So next up, we've got Chris VanHook from Clean Green Certified. Very excited to hear a little bit about their program. And Chris has traveled quite a distance to be here tonight, so I'm very honored to welcome Chris VanHook, everybody.
This one? Okay. Thank you, Erica, and thank you, everybody, for the opportunity to talk to you tonight. I did come up from Crescent City, just across the border. I like Philadelphia Phillies. I was actually raised in Philadelphia. I left 40 some odd years ago, but like the hat. We're based out of Crescent City, just across the border from Brookings, Oregon, and headed up through Eugene, Portland, Seattle, over to Spokane on about a 3-week trip. This is my first night out again. So I'm on the road about 200 days a year. I've got a van that's a cherry paneled law office with the degree on the wall. 2 surfboards, a backpack, and a mountain bike in there. But anyway, we run the Clean Green Certification Program. And we have 2 companies. We have one company which is Global Culture, and that's a USDA accredited organic certification company. And there are only 84 of those in the world, globally. You know, there are thousands of inspectors. There are probably, thousands of inspectors, but there are only 84 USDA accredited companies. So what does that allow us to do? That allows us, I was a marine biologist for 35 years. I didn't go to law school till I was 46, so I worked on the water my whole life. But anyway, what does that mean to be one of those 84? It means that, not only do we have the inspections down, but all of our staff, everybody, we've got staff that's on board that can do OMRI level reviews, that's federally accredited to do reviews. We also have to attend USDA training every year, as well as California Department of Food and Ag every year. We meet with the Oregon Department of Ag every year, Washington Department of Ag, Nevada Department of Ag. So that often those ag departments actually call us to help figure out what the organic regulations are. So it's a nightmare, basically. And the reality is that because we're a federally accredited company, the auditors that we get from Texas are just like, I want to kill that guy, and then the auditors from Oregon and California are pretty cool with what we're doing. But we have to be extremely careful not to cross that line. And if you're not actually an accredited certifier, you can dance around that line. Call your weed organic, call your cannabis organic, call your certification organic, whatever. But we can't. And we don't think that that's good for the farmer either. So all we do in our certification program is we address it. I've been growing weed since I was a kid, and I grew up with it. And, but all we're doing with this program is moving the existing regulations for agricultural and food handling into the cannabis industry. Because I don't think it's helpful to spend time developing what we think is going to be the regs or what we think they ought to be or this, because there's a whole world, there's a multi-billion-dollar organic industry out there. And as cannabis becomes legalized, it's going to dovetail right into that. And so 99% of the consumers don't look for, biodynamic was a big one years ago, or, bird-friendly or shade-grown for coffees. They look for those, but only after they see that USDA organic logo. And, and we can have arguments, there's good conversations to be had on whether or not the federal organic program is legitimate anymore. You could be raising dairy cows in China, dehydrate the milk, ship it to the United States as milk powder, reconstitute it as yogurt, and say made in the USA. So there's all kinds of problems with the global organic program. But the fact is that if everybody's telling the truth and everybody's doing what they say they're doing, it actually is an excellent program. But anyway, so that's what we do with the Clean Green program. We started back in 2003. We're certifying cannabis in California, Oregon, Washington, Colorado, Nevada. We have applications out in Florida. We certified about 20,000 pounds last year, and it looks like this is going to be another good year. So anyway, that's what we do. It starts with an application. We treat it just as if we're going to a broccoli or tomato farmer. And another thing that we do is it'd be real easy for me to go out and say, yeah, you pass, pay me, and you're good. But we don't. We, just like the organic program, we separate the inspection from the review. So we incur all those costs of having, our USDA accredited reviewer also works for Clean Green Program. So I go out and do the inspections, and while I think you might pass, I'm pretty sure you're going to pass, we still incur all those costs of having a reviewer review it and review all the inputs and then say, yes, in fact, you do qualify. So in addition to the organic program, we have a couple other components, and that's the one nice thing about the Clean Green Program is that we can be more adaptable as problems come up. Years ago, when we first started, it was not uncommon for people to be jacking their electricity off of a transformer. So that's led to the question, where do you get your electricity? And so that would be an inappropriate answer to say off the transformer, and my buddy hooked it up. So then also we ran into like the diesel dope years ago in Northern California. And so, the concept of burying a 40-foot container underground and growing indoor plants in beautiful Humboldt or Mendocino County with lots of sun, using a diesel generator, causing forest fires and stream degradation. So that's not certifiable. So we have, and then, as this drought came in place and as it's just decimated the salmon streams, we put the requirement of you need to have a legal water source and you need to have water conservation practices in place. And then, of course, to deal with, 10 years ago, or 14 years ago when we started, the overall quality of outdoor was not considered very high, and the whole the carbon footprint of indoor was very, very high. So over these 14 years, so in order to address those issues, everybody that's a Clean Green certified grower has to have a carbon footprint reduction program in place, and it needs to improve every year. So whether you're an outdoor farmer or an indoor farmer or a traveling attorney using single-use propane bottles, we all need to reduce our carbon footprint. And so that's and that's what we do, so that when the consumer reaches for a Clean Green certified product, they know that all of these other facets beyond what the organic program does are also included. Last year we added another one that we were a little disappointed to hear that throughout California, one Latin American country was bringing even poorer Latin American people up to work for their trimming. They slept in the shop on the concrete floors, men and women. You fed them frozen burritos from Costco. You gave them a microwave. They worked 16 hours a day, and then you paid the boss $100 a pound, dropped from $250 to $100 a pound. Can we use those trimmers? And our first reaction was, no, hell no, you can't use those trimmers, because they're, Then we said, but then we said, well, what about the poor bastard that walked from Guatemala? So then we said, okay, if you're using human trafficked slave labor, then you need to treat them appropriately if you're going to be certified. And so that means that we need separate sleeping quarters for both men and women. We need separate hygiene quarters for both men and women. And I want to see receipts for actual real food, and I want to make sure that they got paid at least $15 an hour. And so by the time we get through, the human trafficked slave labor stuff, half the people in the room left. So, but anyway, that's what we want to do, because that's all we do in this big industry. All we do in this industry is try to maintain a qualified third-party certification program that can stand up to grilling in court or grilling by state legislatures, because as the states develop regulations, we're already qualified. We're already federally accredited. As the feds develop regulations, we're already accredited. We're already qualified. As we attend these meetings with the USDA, I've been talking to them about cannabis legalization and cannabis certification for the past 4 years. And actually under the 2014 Farm Bill, the 2014 Farm Bill allowed for industrial hemp to be grown under a pilot project in states that allowed industrial hemp. And 3 weeks later at the USDA training, I asked the head of the organic program if we can now certify them as organic. And he said, absolutely. Those small pilot projects are now eligible for federal certification. And the same thing's going to happen when cannabis gets legalized. The day that it's federally allowed, 2 weeks later, it's going to be eligible for USDA organic certification, and that's what the consumers are going to be looking for. Again, we can have lots of conversations on whether or not it's a perfect program. It's not, but that's what we feel we do, is we just address it as if we're here for broccoli or tomatoes, and we move right through the program so that we're very confident that a Clean Green certified grower is going to be able to move comfortably into the organic program as it's eligible, as it becomes legal. But also, the paperwork will be worse, of course. But the other thing is that nobody that's Clean Green certified is doing anything that would prohibit them from getting into the organic program. So that's sort of a mainstay there. And then, just like the organic program, it's not just farms and crop production. It's also processor handling, food production. So as you move into like the CO2 extracts, we implement them just as if we're doing, rose essence or rose oils. And then if you're moving into the edible company, if you're making cookies or brownies or whatever, we're just bringing those same USDA organic food and handling regulations right into the cannabis industry, so that your cookie has to have all organic ingredients and a Clean Green certified cannabis. So that is a big a good thing, because we're not making up those regulations. So whoever's working with us in their edible company is already going to be familiar with having a thermometer in the refrigerator, having hand wash stations nearby, having food serve safe certification. All of that stuff is going to be very similar. So the goal, is the same goal as with the organic program. And I'm not here to defend the organic program, but the goal is the same thing: is that when somebody reaches for that product, they know that it's been third-party certified by a qualified, non-conflicted certification program, from that retail packaging all the way through processor and handler, and all the way back to the seed or cutting where it started. And that's sort of what the states are moving towards now anyway. So, and one last thing, it's a real good program because it's a real liability reducer. It's a liability reducer for a crop producer, and it's a real liability producer for an outlet or a distributor or an edible company. Because if somebody comes in and says, hey, I got sick on malathion from your cannabis, then you could say, well, I don't think so, because I'm third-party certified, and this is what I use. So if you're doing what you say you're doing, it's a huge liability reducer, because you automatically raise the bar that accuser is going to have to come over. They're going to have to say that you did not follow your own procedures that were established prior to the incident, a much higher bar. If you're not doing what you say, which was a question that came up earlier about how do you check, if you've signed documents under penalty of perjury that you've used back guano and chicken manure and safer soap and neem oil, but in fact you're using malathion, it's better that you never even got in the program and you never even signed those documents. So that's really, if you're doing what you say, it's a great liability reducer. If you're not doing what you say, it's better just to not even be in the program. And so, anyway, I think that's about what we do. It's an application process, it's an input review, and then we go from there. Yes? And then also, once I leave the inspection, it generally takes about 3 weeks. Oh, one last thing is, every farmer every year gets a pesticide screen. Unfortunately, in the cannabis lab industry, there are no licensed cannabis labs. So in order to maintain a qualified third-party program, we decided instead to use soil samples and ship them to a federally licensed agricultural lab, which is the same lab we use for our organic program. So we'd love to be able to use those labs for flowers and leaf matter, but we're not able to at this time. So the choice is use an unlicensed lab for flowers and ship it through the mail, which is against federal law, or send soil samples to a federally licensed agricultural lab. And we feel that's better. It's difficult to deny a certification because somebody failed an unlicensed weed lab, but you can deny a certification if you fail a licensed lab. I'm looking forward to Oregon and Washington are moving into starting to license their labs, and once that happens, we'll be able to start using those as well. Every farmer every year gets a pesticide test. The organics, it's about 5%. So that's the end of my talk.
Yes. Okay. Hi. You mentioned water rights.
Right.
Because normal farmers are able to negotiate water rights. For example, in the Columbia Gorge, if a Washington state legal, registered, organic, recreational, or medical outdoor farmer wants to go and negotiate for water rights, competing with apple farmers and other farmers out there who have had water rights for decades,
Right.
they're being denied. So my question to you is, how do you think marijuana farmers should look at negotiating water rights? Two, knowing that we can't negotiate water rights, because as far as I know, Colorado, California, Oregon, Washington have all been denied water rights. What do you think we should do? Because right now we have to water our plants
Right.
with the city water, and it's got a lot of crap in it. I don't want in my marijuana.
Well, are you allowed to have a agricultural well? Are you allowed to have a well on property?
Nope.
Okay. Well, I don't know. In California, you can get an agricultural well for cannabis. You can get there are exempt water rights. Now, I will say that here's my pitch for rainwater collection. Every 1,000 square feet of rooftop, every inch of rain is 550 gallons. So if you go online, if you go to YouTube and look under free water for cannabis on YouTube, free water for cannabis, you'll see a 7 or 8 minute video by a friend of mine in Mendocino County who has a 60,000 gallon rainwater collection program. Right. Okay, so every state's different. We work across 6 different states, and there's 56 counties in California. They're all different. But in answer to your question, what I would do is there's state water rights, and what I would do is somebody said already, you're gonna need to organize into the Oregon Cannabis Association. You're going to need to pool your money just like Calavo did, just like Diamond Almonds did, just like Sunkist Lemons did. You're going to have to pool your money. You're going to have to get a crack water attorney, and you're going to have to start, paying off lobbyists and that kind of stuff. Yeah, if you don't, well, yeah, you're not going to be able. So how are you guys? Well, I don't know how people are getting water somehow in Oregon. I mean. Right. That's the same problem that they're having in Southern Oregon. So, yeah. Right. Well, in California, you can actually get a permit now for cannabis. Yeah. So no, I think what's going to happen is you're just going to have to do the same thing everybody else did. You're going to have to pool your money, and you're going to have to just start approaching it. And when the state realizes that you've got a multi-million-dollar industry here, then I was going to say billion. It's a Well, it's a $14 billion industry in California. It's so I would assume that it's a couple of $1 billion up here as well, and so that just needs to be made real clear, and that's unfortunately made clear by attorneys and lobbyists. Right. I know. Well, just so we're all clear, the era of $6,000 a pound and 3 months in Belize every year is over. It's going to be less profit, more paperwork, headache. Yeah. Well, it's a new world, and it's going to be a lot worse. So there we go.
I know we've got a lot of hands right here.
I wanted to know if you were doing anything for a GRAS certification program to get hemp products recognized as generally recognized as safe.
Well, hemp products and grass, food products. Well, grass generally recognized as safe that I'm familiar with is for inputs. So like inputs that are generally recognized as safe, so that they don't need registration, and those people are going to be able to tell you more about that. But that's the only work I have with GRAS, G-R-A-S. It's and actually the California Department of Food and Ag and the federal EPA both issued guidelines on pesticide use in cannabis. and the feds said, we're not endorsing it, but we're asked this question a lot. So here are guidelines for pesticide use in cannabis growing. And they came to the only conclusion that we can come to, and that's that there are no registered pesticides for cannabis, period. And it's against federal law to use anything not in accordance with its label. So what the federal EPA and what the California Department of Food and Ag said, and it's the same conclusion that Oregon's going to be coming to, is that the only pesticides that are not illegal to use are those that are GRAS, generally recognized as safe, so they do not need to even be registered. And that's your neem oil, safer soaps, and your biologicals and stuff. In Oregon, right? But see, that's a state issue. But see, none of those. And Colorado did the same thing as well. But what happens once it gets started is that the federal law trumps yeah. And so lots of times the states are spending too much time developing lists that they think are going to be okay. In Colorado, it was heavily influenced by the indoor warehouse industry. And so, but eventually, the reality is that it's either registered for cannabis or it's not. And there's no real getting around it. The Oregon can't say you can now use Eagle 20 because we got lobbied, yeah, so. Yeah.
Right over here, Chris.
Yes, I've been a licensed Oregon realtor for 30 years, and 40% of my business has been country property. I'm also a member of the Oregon Tilth Membership Advisory Committee, and I just want to say that one little bit of confusion about the use of water rights for wells. If you're doing any commercial activity under half an acre, you're supposed to have water rights, even off of your own well. And if it's over a half an acre, you're supposed to have water rights off of your well. So it's a little bit confusing if you're doing under a half an acre. Sometimes you may have to bootleg it. And the second thing I wanted to ask you is, could you say, as Oregon Tilth, some of us on the MAC steering committee have been trying to get Oregon Tilth Board to go into certification, and we've been told that the NOP, the National Organic Program, will not allow certification of either industrial hemp, adult
Right.
use, or that. So I'm just curious about that.
They won't. Remember the Texas auditor I talked about earlier? It was again, because it's a federal accreditation and cannabis is not federally recognized, we are not able to certify it under our other company, Global Culture. So that's why we started, and that's exactly what the answer was back in 2003, which is why we started the Clean Green program. So no, Oregon Tilth will not be able to certify cannabis. Global Culture will not be able to be, Quality Assurance International, nobody will be able to until it's federally accredited or recognized. However, the one you were talking about, something else there that, the irrigation, yeah, well, the water rates and, so we're not going to be able to get it certified. Oh, industrial hemp. The USDA did allow for industrial hemp to be certified if they were pilot projects approved under the the U.S. Farm Bill in 2014. Unfortunately, what happened is a certifier from Nebraska went and started certifying commercial industrial hemp farms in Colorado. And so all of a sudden the press is out that we're now a USDA organic industrial hemp company, and so the feds issued guidance and shut it down. So unfortunately, it was an example of a certifier jumping way out past the bar. So anyway.
We have time for one more question. I had a hand right here.
Hi, Chris. My name is Brett. Thanks for being here tonight. You're a great speaker. I had a basic question, was about fertilizers maybe, and like fish fertilizer, like Kelsey had mentioned, or mycorrhizal. How do you approach it? One, and are they treated any differently?
Under the Clean Green program or the organic program?
Either or.
Okay, well, what we do, and I'm just going to pitch just one last thing out. The USDA organic program can logically come to an illogical conclusion. And we made the decision that we're going to stop at that point. And so, for example, and Omri's going to help it a lot better. Like, you might be able to use something for animal feed, but not for a crop nutrient. So we don't make, we stop at that point. But basically, all of our inputs under the Clean Green program are reviewed by our USDA organic USDA accredited input reviewer. And so we don't drill down quite as far. We don't need documentation. Well, we actually do check for non-GMO ingredients and stuff. So I'd say it's about 95% the same. We also do check a lot of the ingredients that aren't on the label that that are used. So it's pretty similar to the USDA organic. But I'm just going to say one last thing I forgot about is that Clean Green for 35 years the High Times Cannabis Cup was held in Amsterdam for 35 years, and all of a sudden, California was recognized as, that might not be too popular here, but recognized as growing the best cannabis in the world. So in 2010, they moved the High Times Cup to San Francisco. That was the first one ever in the United States. And the Clean Green certified growers won the San Francisco High Times Cannabis Cup in 2010, 2011, 2012, 2013, 2014, and again in 2015. Won the San Francisco Patient's Choice Cup 2012, 14, and 15 in 4 categories. Won the Emerald Cup, the Premier Outdoor Cup, except for the one that's going to be this Saturday. Won top place in the top 5% in the first place, and won 3rd place in the Seattle High Times Cup 2014, and Dope Magazine's Judge's Choice 2014. So these are the type of growers that, years ago when we started, they said you can't grow good cannabis organically. And so all those awards stacked up prove otherwise, that you can grow the finest cannabis in the world, organically. So anyway, there we go.